Welcome, everybody, and thanks for joining us this morning. And we're going to talk about automations and real-time events in the platform with FME Flow. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, to kick us off today, we'll introduce our lovely panel of presenters. I'll hand things over to Matt first to introduce himself.
Sure. Hi, my name is Matt Matemore. I'm a FME Flow specialist, so helping educate, provide support, and address any challenges customers have in their FME Flow journey.
Great, thanks, Matt. My name's Stuart Harper. I'm VP of Product Development at SAFE. Work closely with Don. I've been at SAFE for 15 years now, so lots of knowledge.
Yeah, and I'm Don Murray. I'm the co-founder and CEO, and I feel like I'm on a game of, for those who are in my era, of Sesame Street, and one of these is not like the other. So when you look at the picture of Matt, Stuart, and I will leave it as an exercise for the viewer to identify what is the big difference between Matt, Stuart, and myself. So there we go. With that,
far.
I think he has some extra he could give us.
And you notice, Matt, we have a lot of emojis that look like us too. So
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I said, give me the emoji cut.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Before we hop in here, just a quick intro to Livestorm. If you have any audio issues during the webinar, we have a help button on the bottom left, and there's 4 simple steps there. The emoji button, you're all using it already, so feel free to share your reactions with us during the webinar. We have a poll coming up on the bottom right, so keep an eye on that tab, as well as the questions tab. So we'll have Q&A at the end, so if you have any questions for Matt and Stuart and Don as we go through, please do leave those in the questions tab. We'll keep an eye on it, and then we'll have that session at the end. And keep letting us know where you're tuning in from with the chat tab there. If you'd like to download the deck, you can do so with the button on the top right of the PDF as well. All right, and at this point, I'll get our presenters to turn off our webcams just to save on some bandwidth for the remainder.
Great.
And I'll hand things back to Don for the agenda.
Sure. Yeah. So here's the agenda. We're just going to go, I'll go very quickly over, what are real-time events, how that, the sources, how do they fit in with automation so that you can, take advantage of them. And then we will go into highlight a few customer stories, also with a link on to our website that has many, many customer stories all around automation and real-time events. And then Matt is going to show us some amazing demos showing how we connect applications and do other things. I won't say anything more than that. And then, of course, Q&A and some other resources if you want to learn more. And, of course, your community code. Yeah, so first we're going to have a flash demo.
Yeah, let's kick things off with a quick flash demo to just give you an idea of some of the real-time capabilities of FME. So here we're looking at a sample geodatabase of some street data. We'll see that there's a neighborhood up top missing streets. This is FME Form where you can author workflows, and this is going to take a file in real time, do some validation, and put the information in that file into our geodatabase. And if there's any validation errors, we're going to write that out to file and email the sender. And this is FME Flow. We're going to see this a lot more through the webinar. This is where you can create your real-time automation. So one of the triggers we have is an email trigger. When an email comes in, that's going to run that workspace we just looked at and process that file. So let's create an email. I'm going to email the FME Flow instance, and we'll say this is new road data attached. It's going to be attached as an Esri shape file. So I'll attach that file of the new street information, and I'll submit that. And now if I go look at this automation's log file, might take just a moment for the email to go through. I'll hit refresh, and we'll see it's already come through, been processed, translation was successful. So if we go back into our geodatabase and refresh now, that region that was missing data now has the data put in from the attachment on the email in real time.
Nice, nice. And if the data had errors, they would just get an email back. So that shows also, for people in the field who are collecting data, they can have real-time data validation, which they love. So yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so back to me. And so now the poll, Elizabeth.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and launch that in our polls tab here. So we'd love to know, how frequently does your company currently use real-time data for decision making? Give everyone a moment there. The votes are rolling in. It looks like quite the contrast, actually, between folks that so far are using it daily, and then also perhaps a lot of opportunity because there is folks currently using it rarely and monthly.
Yeah, and never some. Yeah. So yeah, interesting. That's great. Awesome. Okay, so thanks for that. So I guess close the poll, should I?
I think we're good. We can just leave it open and keep it running there.
Oh, okay.
Keep voting.
Okay.
But yeah, I think we're good to move on. Thanks everyone for voting.
Okay. So now, so first, what are real-time events? So if we look at, data velocity and the things that FME supports, we support everything from batch processing, which can be traditional ETL, where on a schedule, or to generate reports, or just to move data to keep them in sync. That's at the low end. It's not being triggered by the arrival of data in any way. So that's really the key. You just have data you might have been collecting for a while. You want to run trend analysis or something like that, and that's batch processing. At the other end, the other extreme is, you're connecting to a really high velocity data source. Could be IoT sensors, could be millions of messages a minute. And that's called stream processing. And that webinar we did was on April 16th. So if you click the links when you get this, you'll be able to, or if you go on to our webinars at safe.com and you'll find that one. And today we're in the middle. This is, events that aren't high velocity, but they're not batchy either way. Like Matt said, like the number of files that are going to be submitted are, there's going to be, few tens maybe a day, or hundreds a day, or 1,000 a day or whatever, but not millions of anything. So, and just to show that the FME platform covers all that. So regardless of what kind of processing you want to do on your data, FME is good for that. So real-time events, what are they used for? You just saw data integration where Matt had some data that arrived via email, and he was able to quickly integrate that into the working system. There's also application integration, which we'll talk about, which is connecting applications. So when updates in one application happens, it moves to another one. And then there's real-time data processing. Again, data comes in, you want to do something with it to make some decision based on the data. So those are all just some of the things. So what are some of the sources of real-time events? Application events. So it could be a database trigger. We have some organizations who have set database triggers. So when a new record is inserted or updated or deleted, then a webhook trigger is fired to do some work to maybe replicate that in other systems, or create a log or something like that. Polling, that is an event as well. There's lots of legacy applications out there that don't have the ability to post to a webhook, or they don't have any automatic way of doing anything like that. So, but you can poll to check for data, and we have those on those legacy. You might have a system that has a timestamp, and you can do queries to poll it. And of course, there's many other data arrival events. We saw that with Matt's thing. When email arrived, it did it. We can also do data that arrives in a directory. So it could be a directory on the FME Flow instance, or it could be a file shared directory. And then, of course, object stores. If a data arrives in AWS, Azure, or Google, you can do that. FTP, good old FTP. I think it might be as old as me, maybe older. So And of course, there's many some secure variants now, you know, SFTP, and that's still as popular as ever. Many of the FTP sites don't have the ability to post a webhook. So our FTP data arrival event is you specify how often you want to check the FTP. And again, there's many others. Could be through an FME, you know, flow app, for example, where a user uploads data. You could, you know, there's a number of ways you could do that. And of course, devices could be a scheduled event, because maybe you want to do replication. You want to move data, you know, over every night or every hour or every 15 minutes, or, you know, and then JMS, of course, and flow streams and flow apps and event notification services on Amazon. So SQS, SNS, and Azure Event Grid, and again, the list goes on. And at the bottom is just a, you know, sort of a graphic, and that very much is like what Matt just showed us. So some of the benefits, of course, application integration. You know, you have one application, and Matt's going to show this. Something's updated in one application, and you want that information immediately replicated in another application. Without this, you know, there's still some organizations where people have to enter the same information in multiple systems, and nobody enjoys doing that. It's manual. It's not really it's not a good use of the person's time. It's error prone. People type the wrong address or whatever in one system and not the other. There's just so many things that can go wrong with that. Where you connect it automatically, and now you can, you know, have, as data is entered in one system, other systems being updated. So that's really good. And data integration. Matt gave a perfect example of that. As data arrives, being, in his case, he validated it to make sure it was good, and then he moved it into the database. Lots of organizations use us for that. If it passes, they might move it into staging first for a final QA. But people submitting data, whether it be through an FME flow interface or via email, they really like the fact they'll get that immediate feedback on the quality of the data, because the best place to perform QA on data is before it gets into your system. So that's really, really key. And again, no code. Everything about this was no code. Matt showed FME Form Workbench. He showed the FME Flow Automations interface. So you do not have to write any code at all. So, and of course, you have save time and have a happier team. I have yet to meet a person who loves those monotonous tasks. We all like to do things that are higher value. We like creating automation that removes monotonous tasks, and we have some superstars at SAFE who do that, who just love, you know, you give them a task and they will identify the monotonous parts and automate it, and it's really great. And so, of course, another benefit is that if everybody is seeing the latest data in all the systems, they're all working with the most up-to-date information, they're going to make more informed decisions. So yeah, just some of the benefits. Some of the capabilities of ours: scalable. So you can scale processing to move mountains of data quickly. Like with our automations, Matt showed it was very simple, but we have some users who you can scale up the number of workflows, FME Workbench, that are being run simultaneously. So if you have a huge amount of data with automations, you can scale up many FME engines at the same time to move lots of data. And of course, a large number of triggers, or these we call an events cause a trigger to happen. And one thing is, if you're using automations and there's a trigger we don't support, let us know, because we're always adding more. And again, powerful orchestration, as I sort of alluded to. You can use parallel processing to move huge amounts of data. You can also distribute the processing to be close to the data, using the FME Remote Engine Service, or both in the same. And our orchestration layer of automations is, really, really powerful to ensure that you can get your tasks done, how and where you want them done. So, spatial data and real-time events. This is our strength. is spatial data. And, you know, we compete more and more with the large enterprise integration systems like the Informaticas of the world, the Talons, the Dell Boomies, and they do not do spatial at all. So we're always harping on the value of spatial. You just see many things you don't see. The world we live in is spatial. I don't know about you, but the first thing when I wake up, I think about is, oh, I need coffee. Where's my coffee, right? And so then I stagger out and go find my coffee machine and have my coffee. So the very first thought I have is where. And maybe when I get really old, I'll be like, where am I? But that's but right now it's where's my coffee. So but still, the first question will be where, right? So and we have a great presentation that we'll probably share that we're doing in EMEA. Gartner in London, and it's spatializing a CRM. It's a customer presenting the amazing insights that their organization gets. For years, they've had a CRM, but they didn't spatialize it, and they used FME to, put spatial into it. And it's just amazing what they're doing there. So, because spatial data enables you to see more, and with streams, you can also see the when part better. So, and of course, spatial data is everywhere. We all know that. I'm talking to the converted here, and you can just do so much with it. Stay tuned for AR and what we're doing with that, but it's everywhere. And this is our platform form. And Matt showed you both. You can build workflows, you can inspect the data at each step of a workflow, and then FME Flow is all about automation. Everything about FME Flow is about automation. In the earlier webinar on streams, you saw it was automating, the processing of stream data in real time. So, and again, no code. So yeah, so FME Flow is automation, and events are what drive automations. And we have so many customer stories on events, but I picked a few. So Electra, this is one with IoT sensors to improve the power network outage response. PowerLink Australia, they use automations for spatial emergency readiness, particularly around forest fires. So there's a lot of fires happening, and so they have a really great system. And then the city of Omaha there has one. And if you click on the link, many more, literally you're going to find, another 10 anyway on automation, because FME Flow really is automation. So, yeah. And so real-time events are about enabling you to, make better decisions, keep all your systems in sync. So your decisions are based on, what is going on now, right? So, yeah. And I think I hand this off to Stuart here.
Thanks, Don. Yeah. So I'm just going to quickly kind of differentiate automations versus streams. We're going to be focusing on automations today, but we do have this other kind of capability on FME Flow for handling real-time data. So the main differentiation between FME Flow automations and FME Flow streams, it's really around data volumes. So FME Flow automations is very, very well suited to low, medium volume streams. So really the maximum 100 kind of events per minute, maybe a bit less than that, around 60, probably one a second. So as Don's already mentioned, this is good for things like when an email comes in, or these lower volume kind of events. Now, these events trigger, they trigger more complex workflows. So you can do things like run multiple workspaces, and you can build out really complex kind of logic. FME Flow Streams, which is another product component of Flow, this is very, very well suited to high data volumes. So if you have millions of records per minute coming in, and you want really, really kind of responsive near-time processing, then you need to focus on using FME Flow Streams. And FME Flow Streams is always on, and it's receiving data from the stream. So that's where you get the low latency from. And because you can handle that much higher throughput, though, it does mean that the workflow you can build is a little bit more simple than what you can build without automations. Now, the really key thing here is the workflows for both of these, they're underpinned by FME Form. Matt's going to show you in a second. And so whichever tool you're using, whichever feature component you're using a flow, you're building out the same logic underneath using the same tooling. So you only need to learn that component once. So here's a kind of just a quick diagram view just to show the difference. So on the left, we've got event messages coming in. So this could be email, could be a file being uploaded to a directory. And these lower volume triggers, they're suited to automations. And when a trigger comes in, a workspace comes up and it runs the job and processes the event. On the right-hand side, we've got the stream, and the stream processing is, we have this job always running, and you can see here, the stream processing is well suited to high volume sensor data. It might be a GPS tracker in a car, it might be a sensor on a machine, and often we're connecting to message brokers in this situation, maybe something like Kafka. And as soon as that message comes in, we're going to process that event using the stream processing engine. Event triggers. So these are the event triggers on associated with automations. So you can see here we cover the main clouds of Amazon, Azure, but then we also have much lower level connections, things like WebSocket, SMTP, SFTP, FTP, network. So these allow you to plug in at a much lower level to capture events across all systems. And we'll see in the second, the WebSocket one and the HTTP request, these really unlock thousands of workflows because you can poll for data and you can trigger events using WebSocket from other systems. Okay, so I think now it's time to dive into the demos, and Matt's going to actually kind of bring all of this to life and show you what we've got.
Great, thanks, Stuart. Yeah, let's look at some demos. So let's start with another example of real-time data integration. We saw a very quick one in the Flash demo, but we'll look at one that's a little more fleshed out. Before we get into that, I just want to talk about some of the key takeaways here and kind of summarize where the FME platform can really deliver on real-time data integration. So FME Form and Flow, they let you visualize your process without looking at code. So it makes it more clear and maintainable. FME Flow automations can ensure data import tasks happen immediately as triggered by many different events we support. Of course, validation, which we've already seen a little bit of, data validation can be part of your workflow and ensure that only the high quality data gets imported into the destination. And email notifications ensure that appropriate personnel are notified immediately. So let's talk about the scenario we're going to look at. So in this scenario, we have a list of food programs that are offered at different shelters in a Snowflake data warehouse. And the shelter information is kept in one data store. That's also in a separate Snowflake table. And the food programs are submitted via CSV file from different jurisdictions, and they're dropped into an Amazon S3 bucket. And we want to keep the data in our data warehouse up to date with our food programs. So our goal is to update the data warehouse when those CSV files get submitted. And the challenge is that access to the data warehouse and flow data needs to be validated. A key, of course, will be our FME Flow S3 Bucket Watch automation, and the result is that Snowflake is going to be updated in real time. So just a quick diagram to visually see what we just talked about. We're going to use an S3 bucket trigger. It's going to kick off an FME Form workspace. As Stuart mentioned, all those workflows are authored in FME Form, regardless of how they run on Flow. And then the data is going to be put into Snowflake, and we'll also get an email notification when this automation is completed. Okay, let's look at the actual demo. So just give me a moment and share the screen here. Great, so let's start in the FME Flow automations. We've already seen one example of an email trigger. This is a different trigger. This is an Amazon S3 bucket trigger. And if I open this up, we'll see I've provided a path to watch, which is a food programs folder in Amazon S3. I can validate that, make sure my trigger is okay before starting my automation. And so when a CSV file gets dropped in that bucket, it's going to run this shelter food programs workspace that was authored in FME Form. And we see that it has a parameter for the file path, and that's being passed in from Amazon S3. So our workspace knows where to go pull that file down. And then regardless of whether the workspace succeeds or fails, we're going to send an email notifying that the automation has completed with some details. And we can validate this external action as well, make sure it's valid. So let's take a closer look at this workspace in FME Forum, because this is really where the heavy lifting happens. So I'll just zoom in here. And the first thing we see over on the left here is our S3 connector. And so let me select that. So this is what the parameters look like. We have a path there that's being passed in from the parameter in the workspace. And so the workspace is going to download that CSV file from Amazon S3. It's going to read all the rows in, and we'll do some schema validation. And then we're going to do some enrichment. So we're going to join to this, to our shelter table that has a list of all the shelters, and add that information to the CSV, so we have a more complete picture of the food programs. So then we'll take that join data, and we're going to do some change detection. So we're going to read in here our Snowflake table of food programs and take a look at what's been updated, inserted, or deleted. So we have this very powerful transformer called the change detector, and it can tell us that. And we see, because I've run this workspace already in FME Forum, I've got some feature caching here, and it's detected 14 records inserted and a few deleted. So let's actually go into Snowflake. And in our shelter food program table in Snowflake, I've already run this count query. We have 106 records, and that's going to change after our automation runs. And in S3 here, this is our food programs bucket where, say I'm working at one of these food programs, I'm going to add a new CSV file with new program information. So I'll drag that into the S3 bucket. And when I upload this, that's what's going to kick off the automation in FME Flow. Now, before I do that, I forgot I should show our CSV data quickly. So we're just looking in FME Data Inspector here. We've got 79 records in the CSV file. Some of the data already exists in our warehouse, so not all of this is going to be put in. But this just gives you an idea of the kind of data that we're bringing in. So information about the different programs. So I've clicked upload, and I'm going to go back to my automation and refresh the log. And we'll see that it's already been triggered due to that file being uploaded. The translation is now just running on something called an engine in FME Flow. So it's going through, it's validating that data and working to get it into Snowflake, and the process has completed. We see it's successful and an email's been sent. So if I fly over to my email, drag that off screen for a moment. Here's the email notification saying that the translation was successful. And I've also included a job log in case I wanted to see more details about exactly what was run. If I rerun this count query, we now have 114 records. So 6 were deleted, 14 were added from the 106. And here's the data in the destination data warehouse table. It's a combination of those shelters and the food programs that have been joined in our workspace, as well as the CSV data, of course. So that concludes the first demo. I know I'm going through these a little quick, but we only have an hour. So hopefully this just gives you a good taste of what our platform's capable of. The next one I want to look at is real-time application integration. So Don's already hinted at this one a bit earlier in the webinar. The key takeaways here I want us to consider are application integration enables your applications to work seamlessly together. So we have a powerful trigger that we're going to look at called the webhook trigger, and that gives you the capability to make connecting applications really simple and fast. Since a lot of web applications, ArcGIS Online, Survey123, which is another Esri product, ArcGIS Portal, many more support webhooks, which can notify FME when changes happen in those systems immediately. And we're going to show how easy it is here to connect 3 different applications. Again, this is all no code, which helps elevate productivity and improve maintainability. So talking about this scenario now, in this scenario, we have unsafe city trees that get reported through Esri's Survey 123. So a citizen can go report an unsafe tree, and these reports trigger the creation and assignment of a service request in CityWorks. So some of you probably work with CityWorks. That's where our service request is going to be created and assigned. And just to talk about some of the different application integration flows, you can have a unidirectional flow. So this would be a linear data flow used to repair, validate, and replicate data, for example, from system A to B. And then you can also have multi-directional flows. So these are data flows where you're keeping both systems in sync. So one system changes, the other one's updated, and vice versa. And quick diagram before we jump into the demo, just kind of visually showing what we're going to see. So the user submits that survey in ArcGIS Survey 123. It triggers our automation, and that's going to run our workspace, actually a few workspaces, and update ArcGIS Online and CityWorks. And you'll see that ArcGIS Online, the layer that underpins the Survey 123 survey, it's going to have the reference to that CityWorks service request, and CityWorks will have all the data that the user submitted in ArcGIS Survey 123. Just quickly show this slide as well. This is another example that you could set up, a little bit more complicated, where both systems are triggering an automation. So when a record gets inserted in CityWorks, or when ArcGIS Online is updated, it's triggering an automation to keep both systems in sync. I say more complicated, but really not that complicated. It would be just 2 webhook triggers and processing the payload coming in from each system. Okay, so let's jump into this demo. We'll start looking at the automation again, and we'll see our trigger here. Instead of a bucket or an email, it's a webhook. And what this lets you do is it creates an FME flow URL that you can provide your source system, like Survey 123 in our example, so that it can ping that URL and send it a JSON payload. And that JSON payload of all the info from the survey is going to get passed into this workspace here. We'll see here it has a parameter for message content, and I'm passing that in from the output of the webhook trigger, which is sending in the JSON data. And you'll see that this workspace has a couple ports below it, attachment and email. So we'll see that when we look at the workspace, there's a special tool we can use called an automation writer to pass data from one workspace to another. And so in this case, we're actually passing some data to another workspace that's going to have to go get the image that's attached to the survey. And our workspace is also creating the body of an email, and it's sending that to an email action so that we can dynamically notify who submitted that survey. So we're going to get their email address from Survey 123, and we're also going to create the email body dynamically. So that's that HTML content that's going to be generated in the workspace upstream and just passed in here. So everything can happen dynamically. We don't have to hard code the email body. So I'm going to start this automation in debug mode just to make viewing the log a little more simple. Okay, and let's jump into Survey 123. This is our community tree reporting survey. I've already pre-filled a form here. So I've located a hazardous tree. I've pinned it on the map. I've added some comments. So we'll want to note these because we're going to see these in CityWorks later. The large branch overhanging the road is badly cracked from the last storm. And I want to drag and drop a picture of that problem tree, the split branch. And I've got my email there. So let's submit this. And we're going to see how quickly that message now comes from Survey 123 into FME. It's almost immediate. And so our translation's already been run, and an email has already been sent back to me as the submitter. So I'll just pull up my email. And here's that confirmation of the tree report. And I've got a service request ID here, this 134216. So that is the service request from the CityWorks record that was created. So now I can go look in CityWorks here. This is CityWorks Respond. This is the dashboard. And I can do a search for my service request. Pull this up. And we'll see that all the data from my survey 123 has been added. I've got the image there. Under the customer calls table, I've got the first entry, which is the description from survey 123. This tree is a hazard, the large branch overhanging the road. There is a large branch overhanging the road. Exactly what was put into survey 123. And some other data has come through as well. Most notably, we have this dispatch field down here. And so our workspace is going to determine, based on where that report happened, who is responsible for that area, which four-person needs to be dispatched. And then over in ArcGIS Online, this is the layer that is beneath our survey 123. If we refresh this and sort by the survey date to get the more recent response, we'll see that the request ID, the survey request ID there, that has come in from CityWorks, and the status is received. And there's our picture that we attached to our survey. So we've kept both systems in sync here. We've synced ArcGIS Online so that we can reference CityWorks and vice versa. So let's look at the actual workspace that's taking that JSON from survey 123. That's the payload that comes from the webhook. That's a parameter that we saw in the workspace action. So here's some sample JSON in there. And so the first thing we do is we receive, when we process that JSON data, we have to parse it all out. And then we're going to do some data enrichment. So this is where we're taking a separate file that identifies which crews are identified for which regions. It's a spatial file. It's GeoJSON in this case, but it could be any, it could be an enterprise geodatabase, whatever. And we're doing a spatial filter to see which foreman is responsible for the area that the tree was reported in. And then we're going to send that record information along with the foreperson to CityWorks. So there's some API calls happening in that bookmark. And then we want to relay that CityWorks data back to ArcGIS Online with that service request ID. And this is where we saw our attachment writer in the automation. So we're sending some information out to go get that picture attachment. And we've also used an HTML report generator to create our email body. And we're sending that out to an automation writer as well, so that it can be passed to that automation, so that email automation action downstream and send the email. So that wraps this demo up. And that's an example of some application integration keeping two systems synchronized. Lastly, I want to talk a little bit about real-time data enrichment. We're going to see another example using a webhook, but it's an example, instead of trying to keep two systems synchronized, we'll enhance the data in one system. So the key takeaways here are that different systems hold different information, and different services can provide different information. You want to leverage those systems and services to enrich data in one system or other systems. So automations can connect to external services like ChatGPT. We have a bunch of OpenAI connectors we'll see in FME to enrich your data. And automations can perform this enrichment when the data arrives, providing better data for better insights. So, automations don't just save time, they do things you couldn't afford to do without them. So let's take a look at the scenario in this data enrichment example. And in this case, by simply creating a basic Salesforce lead with only a first name, last name, and company name, that data can be input into OpenAI to gain additional insights into the new lead. And in this case, the company name from the Salesforce lead is used to answer questions like, what does the company do? What's the revenue? How many employees do they have? where's their headquarters, etc. So in this case, we'll be playing, say, a sales lead. We're putting, or a sales team member, we're putting a lead into Salesforce. And our blocker is, we just don't have time. We're chasing leads. We don't have time to research every company. So we want to let OpenAI do some of that work for us. And the key, of course, will be an FME Flow webhook automation. And we'll use OpenAI's ChatGPT as our research assistant. And we'll see that Salesforce gets updated in near real time. So the workflow illustrating what we're going to see, we've got a lead being entered into Salesforce. That is going to fire a webhook that triggers an FME Flow automation. And it's going to run our workspace that is going to go talk to ChatGPT and ask it a bunch of questions about the lead that's been entered. And then it will update that same lead in Salesforce with additional information. Okay, let's take a look at this demo. So same type of trigger. It's a webhook. This case, it's not coming from Survey123. It's coming from Salesforce. And this is going to run our new lead demo workspace. That's going to go talk to ChatGPT. So let's look at that. So webhook payloads are usually JSON. So we're going to fragment that out and then ask all these different questions to OpenAI. If I start typing OpenAI on the canvas, you can see the different options we have for connecting here. ChatGPT connectors, image generators, etc. Ways to work with OpenAI in your workflow. So now we're going to take the answers to all those questions that we've asked OpenAI, and we're going to ask it to summarize its own answers so that we get a nice description that we can add to the lead. And then we're going to update Salesforce. We're also going to do a little test. If the company makes more than $500,000 in revenue, we want to notify our sales team via Slack. So I'll start this in debug mode. Let's view the log. And I'm going to hop into Salesforce here. I've already started filling out a lead. We're going to go with Mr. Jensen Huang, who's the CEO at NVIDIA. We'll say we have a good lead with NVIDIA here. And you'll notice all this other information is empty. So this is what we're going to get FME and ChatGPT to fill out for us. So I'll click Save to save that lead and refresh. And again, these webhooks are very quick. So we'll see that JSON payload, we see it in the log there, it's already been submitted, and our translation has run and processed that data, asked ChatGPT the questions. And if I refresh this lead now in Salesforce and click details, we'll see now we have the annual revenue. It's pretty high, 166 billion or so, 13,000 employees, the address. We have a nice description about the company. Not 100% sure about the customer count that it's given us, 200. That seems a little low. You can never fully trust ChatGPT. I probably need to refine my prompts there a little bit. But because of the high revenue, it's notified Slack. So now we have a nice description of the company and what they do posted into Slack, and a link to Salesforce with the lead. So there's an example of how we're just using one system. We're enriching the data that gets put into that system in near real time and taking away some effort from the sales team. So that concludes the demos, and I believe I'll pass it to someone's doing the summary here. I can't recall if it was.
I have a few things to say. Mostly, I love this team, right? Like Matt, Matt made it all real, which I just really enjoy. And one of the things on the AI, we have another AI webinar coming up. When is that, Elizabeth? Did you know on the top of your head when the next one is? And our AI, go ahead.
Oh yeah, it's going to be this June actually. So people can stay tuned. That invite will be coming up pretty soon here. The webinar will be published pretty soon.
Yeah, and if you go to the on demand, you'll see other webinars on AI. The one in June, we're going to show you how to talk to Ollama with Llama 3 and things. And so, so there's lots of exciting things going on there, but that was a great demo, Matt. So for sure, just showing all the things, our heads are exploding with thinking of all the ways we can use that. So we saw FME Flow automations. I won't say anything more because Stuart did a great job on this. And then the Flow Streams webinar, if you want to look more about that. The nice thing about FME, of course, is Workbench is where you build them all, whether you're doing a stream or you're doing automations, any kind of work with data. So you don't have to learn different tools to work with data. And if data, but you started with an automation, then all of a sudden you realize the data was too quickly, you can, with little effort, move it over to be a stream. So there's lots of great things you can do there. A little bit about us. We've been doing this for 30 years, hard to believe. And yeah, 200,000 users around the world. So, and so it's a lot of fun. One of the things that our differentiators, we really pride ourselves in a restaurant model. So that's when you go to a really good restaurant, you have to have good product and good service. So we view our customer experience team of what Matt is part of as a value, not a cost, right? And you can just tell how Matt presents that he enjoys what he does, and he's really good at it. And he's there for you, whether you're a customer or you just want to learn more. We have a huge team that really, it makes their day to help people solve problems. Let's face it, everybody has data problems. Even we have data problems. And so yeah. And an overall theme of this whole thing is agnostic. So whether you're thinking about what system you're using from the largest ecosystem or where you're going to deploy it, wherever you want, right? Processing needs to be close to the data. So whatever cloud you're on, whatever operating system you're on, we even run natively on the Mac for Form. We run on ARM chips and Intel chips and cloud. So we run serverless, wherever you want to put your processing. That's really another big differentiator from us. We also have cloud offerings. So if you just want us to look after the whole thing, we have FME Flow hosted. So yeah. And yeah, our support for spatial is just dwarfs everybody else's. So really that's our biggest differentiator. And again, you saw this, the two tools, and Matt did an amazing job showing them both. And yeah, so good job. And we are the only all data integration platform. So all of the other ones do not do spatial. So that means they don't do vector, they don't do raster, they don't do point clouds, they don't do 3D, and the list goes on. And so we're the only one that does all the data enterprise integration. So Elizabeth, you want to tell us about some resources?
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so resources as next steps here. We have an ebook on spatial data for the enterprise. If you haven't checked that out, it's a free resource alongside our academy and knowledge base. So guided learning at your fingertips and lots of how-to demos there. Got some short links available. And our upcoming webinar is safe.com/webinars. Check that out for a list of upcoming and lots of on-demand webinars as well. All of these resources are free. And I thought I'd take a moment here to highlight today our podcasts that are available on demand in case folks want to check those out and haven't had a chance yet. Those are available at EM360. And I'll actually drop that link right in the chat here as well in a moment. Here we go. Yeah, so check that out. A couple of the more recent ones that were quite popular I've displayed on the screen here. Next steps. Contact us to chat about anything data related. So info@safe.com, get in touch. We'd love to help you get started with whatever you might be dealing with. And our FME Accelerator course, I recently took this myself about a year ago, found it very helpful. It's 90 minutes free of charge, and it's a great place to learn the fundamentals of getting started with FME. And our FME community. So as a thank you for joining us here today, we have our community badge code, and I'll drop that in the chat momentarily as well. So yeah, redeem that in the community. You just scroll down and it's on the right side that you can plug in that code in the new community platform. And if you have yet to check out the FME community, we encourage you to do so. It's a great place to network with other users alike and experts. And with that, we have some time remaining here for some Q&A. I'll get our presenters to turn back on their webcams and we can take a look at the questions panel together. A lot of great questions that came in today. Thanks everyone for sharing.
Yeah, there really was.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So why don't I pick one, and then Matt and you pick one, and Stuart, and we'll just continue to round robin. So yeah. So Lewis asked about if there's, can we do further image processing before the data is put to absolutely. FME has a wide variety of raster processing capabilities, and so you can do many wild and wonderful things to your imagery to make it smaller if you want before it's uploaded. Yeah, some of the images today come in these cameras are massive, and so yeah, absolutely you can do that. So, Matt.
Yeah, lots to pick from here. I see one from Lisa. Are the automations we're covering, for example, the trigger and the email, etc., also available in Form or only Flow? So yeah, just to be clear, Form is the desktop product where you're going to author those workflows. But as far as triggering them and automating them, that's on the Flow side of the platform. So you kind of need both products to do that. So short answer, they're in Flow. The triggers are in Flow.
Yeah, we often say FME Form empowers the user, FME Flow empowers the enterprise. So there you go.
That's right.
Yeah. Stuart?
Yeah, there's a question here about database triggers. So database trigger events by using FME Flow or Form, or with the help of batch files to listen to notifications, DB channels. So basically, let's imagine you want to trigger an event when a feature is inserted to a database table or a database is created. One way I've seen it done is you write a database trigger to respond to that event, to capture that event on the database side, and then you use an HTTP library to call out to the automation. So you're pushing data from the database to Flow. Another way I've seen database interactions is you could watch a directory that the database log file writes to as well. Less triggers, but sometimes there's useful information on the logs. So you could watch that as well and trigger an event within an automation that way.
Yeah, just to add on to that, we have a lot of great examples in our knowledge base that walk you through how to, like the Survey 123 example we looked at, how to create a webhook trigger, and the database trigger example Stuart just mentioned. We have examples of that using, I believe, Postgres and SQL Server in our knowledge base too.
Great.
Yeah. And Matt touched on something there. When you're starting something new, do reach out. The thing we all hate is that blank canvas, right? Oh, I've seen this stuff in this webinar. There's things I want to do. Do really reach out to info@safe.com or join the community, and then you can talk directly to the support team. And you're going to be amazed at, how quickly we get back to you. We have so many examples. We can save you so much time too, because there's patterns that happen again and again and again. And once you share with us what you want to do, we'll be able to get you going really, really quickly. And then you'll also, welcome to the restaurant. You'll start to really get how we're different than other software vendors. So I'll do one more. Is there a limitation number of automations running monthly? And the answer is no. We don't charge by number of automations that run. It all comes down to the amount of processing that's there. So if you have many of our Flow instances have multiple engines. So if you have 5 engines, that means you can do 5 things at a time. As you saw with Matt's demo, often these triggers, they take very, very little time, like, a second or 2. And so, and then, so that's, so we don't charge for number of systems connected to, number of triggers, anything like that. Do you have a learner's license? Yes, absolutely. If you want to reach out, we can provide people with licenses to get started and walk you through and find out what you're doing, and then help you be successful. So the accelerator is great. You're actually using Form and Flow, but it's in a browser, so you don't actually have to install anything. And then once you do that, then you can get a learner's license, and away you go.
Do we want to pull any others, or?
I think we're good. Elizabeth, you see any that you want to?
Yeah, it looks like we have covered all of them.
Great.
So far, yeah. But this is a good time to mention, actually, if you do have questions that come up, we will stay online a minute or 2 longer on the back end. So feel free to drop those in. We'll keep an eye out.
Yeah.
All right.
Awesome.
So, yeah. With that, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today and taking the time to learn alongside us. And a big thank you as well to Stuart and Matt and Dawn for your time presenting this content and developing it.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun.
For sure. Yeah. Thank you for joining.
Thanks for
Thank
joining,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye for
now.
now.